What do a 19-year-old student, a group of striking taxi drivers, and the highest office in the country all have in common today? They're all, grappling with the exact same thing, the friction between institutional control and public trust. Today is Friday, August 21, 2026, and welcome to today's Deep Dive.
We are looking at a massive stack of sources today, ranging from major governance overhauls and national protests to diplomatic reversals and global oil pressures.
Let's start at the very top, looking at how the national government is framing its own authority. According to NDTV, Prime Minister Narendra Modi addressed the Economic Times World Leaders Forum. He painted India as a bright spot for growth amidst a world where, global resources are increasingly being weaponized.
The overarching narrative there is definitely optimism. But the really fascinating part is the mechanical shift he claims is driving this progress. He used this address to contrast the past with the present, essentially framing older regulatory systems as a license raj, a system that deliberately manufactured scarcity and unemployment.
He used some very specific phrasing for this, too. He called the old approach production-linked punishment, or PLP.
Oh, that is quite a rebrand.
Yeah, and he contrasted it directly with his administration's current production-linked incentives, or PLI. He stated the government has moved from a prohibited unless permitted framework to a permitted unless prohibited model.
It sounds like changing the default settings on a smartphone from blocking all notifications to allowing everything except the spam. By branding historical regulation as an inherent punishment, it rhetorically positions the current policies as the natural, liberating remedy.
Exactly. The NDTV report notes he cited several concrete examples to prove this shift. He mentioned reforms in railways, the Delhi Metro, Namo Rapid Rail. He even talked about border infrastructure, which he says is finally being treated as a national strength.
Right, rather than an afterthought.
Yeah, and he also pointed to cheap data. But I have to ask, does changing the terminology at the top really trickle down to structural efficiency for everyone at the bottom?
That is exactly the pushback you hear from critics. Framing past policies as a license raj that maintains scarcity, it is a powerful tool to justify current regulatory redesigns. But changing the label from punishment to incentive does not automatically remove the bureaucratic friction that you actually experience on a daily basis.
That friction between the narrative of a smooth-running state and the reality for a citizen trying to get the system to work brings us to a stark story out of Delhi. The Telegraph India reports that an FIR was finally filed over pellet gun injuries sustained by a 19-year-old Delhi University student, Sahil Lokab.
The most critical word in that sentence is finally. This incident stems from a July 20 protest march to Parliament. It took 32 days for this FIR to materialize.
32 days.
Yeah, which raises an uncomfortable question for you to consider. Why does it take over a month to simply register a complaint when the physical evidence is indisputable?
The physical details are honestly staggering. According to the report, Sahil had 3 pellets lodged in his eye and around 200 embedded across his body.
Oh, wow, that is brutal.
And yet this FIR, which cites Section 118.1 for voluntarily causing hurt with dangerous weapons, and Section 125 for rash acts endangering human life, it only happened after Congress leader Rahul Gandhi staged a 7-hour sit-in. He just camped at the Parliament Street police station.
A 7-hour sit-in just to get the paperwork filed. Look at the systemic breakdown that sequence of events represents. Initially, the official police narrative outright denied that pellet guns were even used.
But the Telegraph India report highlights a crucial contradiction, right?
Exactly. A general diary entry by the Rapid Action Force later confirmed 2 rounds were indeed fired on the instructions of a Delhi police deputy commissioner.
You have the police publicly denying it, while their own internal diary confirms it. It feels like an institution aggressively protecting itself until it is forced to do otherwise.
Precisely. And this is why a localized incident created a shockwave massive enough to stall the monsoon session of Parliament. You have an opposition leader alleging that getting a basic FIR registered required approval from the highest levels. Meanwhile, Union Health Minister J.P. Nadda dismisses the sit-in as attention-seeking politics. When the basic mechanism of police accountability stalls, it just paralyzes everything.
When formal grievance systems paralyze, citizens often bypass them entirely to apply their own leverage. We are seeing exactly that in the Northeast right now. The Hindu reports a massive interstate blockade on the Guwahati-Shillong road.
This is the one with the Assam cab operators, right?
Yes, they are actively blocking Meghalaya-registered vehicles for a second consecutive day.
This is a classic retaliatory spiral. The blockade was triggered by attacks on Assam-registered vehicles during a Kazi Students' Union rally in Shillong earlier in the week. Now, the Assam operators have effectively set up civilian checkpoints at key locations like Jorabat and Kanapara.
The geographic stakes here are incredibly high. This is a 95-kilometer arterial route. It is the absolute lifeline for tourists, for medical access, and for airport and railway connectivity.
It is a total choke point.
It is so disruptive that the Assam government had to activate helplines just to manage the stranded individuals. They set up a WhatsApp number, 918-1014-888, and a landline, 0361-238-1511.
It is fascinating to observe private citizens utilize economic chokeholds that basically mimic state-level border sanctions. In retaliation, Meghalaya taxi operators warned they might halt all operations. They started preventing Assam-registered vehicles from entering their state at Bernahat.
Assam operators escalated it even further by barring vehicles carrying fuel and commercial gas from entering Meghalaya.
It is like two neighbors fighting over a property line by cutting off each other's water mains. Both sides are using these logistical blockades to demand accountability and compensation because they clearly don't trust regional authorities to mediate the dispute.
When official mediation fails regionally, it is chaotic. But when official communication stumbles at the highest national level, it is incredibly jarring. The Indian Express brings us a highly unusual piece of diplomatic news regarding Bangladesh Prime Minister Tariq Rahman's upcoming visit.
The president's office is an institution where, every single comma is heavily vetted. Official communications are generally final, which is why this specific timeline is so extraordinary.
At exactly 2 p.m. on August 21st, Rashtrapati Bhavan issued a statement canceling the scheduled change of guard ceremony. They explicitly cited full rehearsals for Rahman's ceremonial reception as the reason.
Which is completely standard procedure.
Right, but then at 3 p.m., they abruptly withdrew that statement.
The revised statement simply declared that the earlier press release stands withdrawn. It completely scrubbed any mention of Rahman or the status of the ceremony.
The Indian Express explicitly notes that the updated communication left the status of the event entirely unspecified. How does the one-hour reversal of this magnitude even happen?
That is the central question for anyone tracking diplomatic protocol. It implies a sudden, highly sensitive variable entered the equation. Was it a routine administrative correction that accidentally revealed too much? Or was there a failure in security coordination?
Or some last-minute diplomatic adjustment?
Exactly. When an institution that relies on precision suddenly goes vague, the silence naturally invites intense scrutiny.
That scrutiny on institutional messaging perfectly bridges into how massive cultural institutions manage their own internal narratives. According to the Times of India, Nripender Misra, the chairman of the Ram Mandir Construction Committee, is firmly rejecting media reports of a rift.
This is the alleged rift between him and former Trust General Secretary Champat Rai, right?
Yeah. Champat Rai resigned about a month ago amid allegations of donation misappropriation. Following that, rumors surfaced of a 9-page critical letter from Rai taking aim at the committee.
Misra completely dismissed it, though.
He called the allegations of the letter a made-up story, stating he had never even seen such a document. Instead of lingering on the drama, he used a review meeting in Ayodhya to pivot hard to construction updates.
Notice the strategy there. He is attempting to swap a narrative of internal chaos for a narrative of concrete, physical progress.
He stated that 60 out of 70 projects are completed. He also promised that the monsoon-related drainage issues will be fixed within 2 months. But the most important detail he stressed was the financial architecture of the project.
Which is entirely funded by donations.
Exactly. Zero government money involved.
And because it relies entirely on public funding, the trust is operating under a microscope. Misra announcing an upcoming internal audit for the completed work isn't just standard accounting. It is a direct defensive maneuver to restore public faith in the wake of Rai's departure.
That public demand for structural transparency is currently erupting on the streets of Delhi. India Today is reporting that thousands gathered at Jantar Mantar in a massive mobilization opposing the University Grants Commission's equity norms.
This protest was organized by the Reservation Reform Andolan, and it was primarily made up of individuals from unreserved categories.
You have key figures leading the mobilization, like NEET aspirant Harsh Dubey and influencer Ajit Party. They were joined by groups like Karni Sena. The police actually had to detain several demonstrators as the crowd swelled.
Jantar Mantar basically serves as the nation's central pressure valve for organized political grievances. Earlier this year, it hosted a 45-day protest by the cockroach Junta Party at the exact same site.
It sees so much activity.
It really does. But this specific demonstration forces you to grapple with an incredibly difficult societal balancing act. How do we balance historical social justice initiatives with the modern anxieties of unreserved aspirants who feel disadvantaged by current UGC guidelines?
The friction is raw. It is driven by a generation terrified of losing their chance at upward mobility.
Absolutely. When people feel the rules of advancement are stacked against them, their trust in the educational authority just crumbles.
Speaking of a generation terrified of losing their shot, let's look at Jharkhand, where the integrity of the testing system is under fire. According to the Telegraph India, student leader Devendra Nath Mahato is accusing the state government of deliberately mounting a weak legal defense.
This is regarding the cancellation of multiple recruitment exams?
Yes, the High Court recently stayed several cancellation notifications for JSSC, CGL, JPSC, and others. Mahato is pointing out a glaring omission here. The Advocate General didn't even show up on the first day of the court hearings.
That is a terrible look.
And he alleges the state failed to present the findings from its own CID investigation into the exam irregularities.
This is a devastating blow to systemic trust for the listener to consider. When the state cancels an exam due to corruption, then allegedly fails to defend that cancellation in court, while sitting on its own investigative evidence, aspirants do not see administrative incompetence. They suspect an intentional cover-up.
Mahato is actively mobilizing around this suspicion. He announced a recruitment system reform yatra starting August 24 from Nemra, which is Shibu Soren's birthplace.
What is their ultimate goal with the yatra?
They have given the government a September 15 deadline to present a strong case in court. If that doesn't happen, they plan to physically garrow the chief minister's residence. Thousands of aspirants' lives are just completely on hold.
That desperation for accountability when state systems appear to fail often leads to civilian groups taking matters into their own hands, which, can escalate quickly.
Which brings us to a violent clash in Rajasthan. The Hindu explicitly details an incident in Rampura Kanwarpura village near Jaipur where activists from the Cockroach Janta Party, or CJP, were physically assaulted.
They were attempting to inspect a dilapidated government school as part of their School Thick Karo campaign, led by Ashutosh Ranka.
They wanted to expose the condition of this school, which is apparently operating out of a cattle enclosure. But the villagers violently rejected their oversight. They barricaded the road, CJP vehicles were damaged, and a volunteer suffered a fractured arm.
The underlying conflict regarding oversight is fascinating here. Education Minister Madan Dilawar accused the CJP of turning educational facilities into political battlegrounds.
But the state government recently issued an order banning outsider entry and photography in schools, right?
Exactly. Ask yourself to consider the friction here. Where does the public's right to accountability end and the government's mandate to maintain administrative order begin?
It is a complete paradox. The government says you cannot look inside, and the activists say we have to look inside because you are hiding a cattle enclosure masquerading as a classroom.
That battle over who gets to monitor whom scales all the way up to international diplomacy.
The Telegraph India reports that India's Ministry of External Affairs has forcefully rejected calls from the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom, or USCIRF, demanding sanctions on the RSS.
Ministry spokesperson Rantir Jaiswal dismissed USCIRF entirely. He labeled them a biased organization lacking credibility.
The push from USCIRF was highly specific. Commissioner Gene Mills stated RSS leaders should be denied diplomatic courtesies. Chair Asif Mahmood took to X, calling the RSS an umbrella organization responsible for attacks on religious minorities.
To understand the mechanics of this, you have to realize that USCIRF recommendations are completely non-binding.
So they have no actual legislative power.
None at all. But their push to designate India a country of particular concern heavily influences broader U.S. policy discussions. It complicates bilateral engagement, even if those sanctions never actually materialize.
Let's shift gears from international political strategy to international sports strategy. The Indian Express brings us a really provocative debate sparked by former India football captain Bhaishang Bhutia.
He is urging fans to boycott the upcoming friendly match between India and Brazil scheduled in Kolkata.
He made these comments speaking on the show 420 grams. He argues the massive funds required by the Bengal government to host Brazil should instead be invested into long-term infrastructure.
He wants that money spent on producing future Commonwealth Games medalists. This strikes at the absolute core debate in sports economics: spectacle versus structure.
Bringing Brazil to Kolkata will generate massive short-term revenue and inspire fans. But Bhuti is essentially arguing that buying a Ferrari doesn't help if you don't have a paved driveway to park it on.
Exactly. Does bringing a global giant inspire a nation, or does it just drain resources that should be spent on the grassroots?
From the economics of football, we end today with the ultimate driver of global economics: crude oil. According to CNBC, oil prices posted a significant weekly rise as the U.S. drastically increases economic pressure on Iran.
The market numbers reflect the geopolitical anxiety perfectly. We were looking at Brent crude hitting $94.39 a barrel and WTI hitting $87.06.
Both are up over 5% for the week. The rhetoric is incredibly tense. Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian cited a June 17 MOU, signaling a desire to end the conflict from a position of power.
Contrast that with U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, who threatened to impose the toughest sanctions in history on Iran.
There is a massive physical component to this, too. The U.S. military confirmed it has moved 660 million barrels of oil through the Strait of Hormuz since early May.
But the CNBC report notes that analysts are highly skeptical. Analyst Halima Croft from RBC questioned whether additional sanctions have any capacity left to alter Iran's behavior at this point.
Because they are already so heavily sanctioned.
Right. And for you, the listener, the global stakes cannot be overstated. The Strait of Hormuz is the choke point for 20 million barrels of oil a day. It dictates fuel, freight, and agriculture costs worldwide.
We have covered a truly massive spectrum of events today.
We really have. But from students demanding exam integrity in Jharkhand to analysts questioning the efficacy of U.S. sanctions on Iran, today's stories all hinge on one vital question: what happens when the people being regulated no longer believe in the authority of the regulator?
It is a question that defines the stability of every institution we discuss today. Something for you to mull over until our next deep dive. Thanks for joining us.
Take care.